Well, shalom everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to continue with the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're up to Siman 7, but before we get into that, I wanted to have a little bit of a look into how this work came about by looking at what went on before it appeared on the scene. Originally, it was a work that existed in the format of Beit Yosef, which was originally written in 1559, that formed the basis of the Shulchan Aruch, the original work by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who was a Spanish Jew living in Safad, which was at that time Ottoman Syria, writing the work in 1563 and then later publishing it in Venice in 1565. Not long after that, a student in Poland handed the work to his rabbi, that rabbi being Rabbi Moshe Israelis, who was doing exactly the same thing. He was producing exactly the same work. And he was shocked to find that there's somebody else had beat him to the punch and he never knew about it. And these two rabbis never met in their lifetime. However, in a great act of humility, he decided to invest a lot of time into going through Rabbi Yosef Karo's work and then added his commentaries to this work. Now, Rabbi Yosef Karo was Sephardic Jew, and so therefore a lot of his halakhic rulings went along Sephardic lines. And so whenever they diverted from Ashkenazic way of doing something, Rabbi Moshe Israelis decided to add the notations in there. This is what Ashkenazic Jews rule on this particular halakha. And then later that work was published with those additional commentaries to the work, which were known as the Mapah, which was the tablecloth, which translates as tablecloth, which I think is a beautiful play on words there, with the Shulchan Aruch itself, literally translated as set table. So you have the set table and you have the tablecloth. And so that gave great weight to the work. And then not long after that, well, significantly sometime after that, actually, the Chofetz Chaim came along and wrote the Mishnah Berurah, which was another commentary that was based on the Shulchan Aruch. And then after that, we have, of course, Rabbi Moshe Ganzfried, who produced the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which, though it translates as abridged Shulchan Aruch, technically it isn't actually an abridgment of the Shulchan Aruch itself. It is an original work on its own, because the definition of something that is abridged is something that simply cuts out the less important parts and just leaves the more significant parts of a work and then publishes it or presents the work. Whereas the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is an original work on its own and was never meant to be a major source, but a source among sources. And the original author, having what some might perceive as a low opinion of the work itself, stating that the work was really only meant for young students learning Torah. At the time of the original publication of the original Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Yosef Karo, it was not entirely received in a positive light, as some rabbis in the day thought that it might be exploited by lazy students, because a lot of the halakot that were presented was presented very concisely, almost like in bullet point form. Well, not really, but compared to the works such as the Gemara, the Talmud, and things like that, where pages and pages are devoted to copious discussions on arriving at certain halakhic decisions and sometimes not even resolving what the actual outcome should be. The Shulchan Aruch just kind of presents it fairly briefly and fairly sort of laid out and fairly like, here's the halakha. And of course, originally Sephardic halakha, then we had both the Sephardic and the Ashkenazic halakha presented. That's pretty much all I wanted to say about it, to give you a bit of an insight of how the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch came about. And just to help you understand what it is we're studying here today, give you a bit more of a background. Of course, there are plenty of other videos and resources out there that give you way more information than I've just given to you there. Okay, so let's get into it. Siman 7, we're looking at the laws of the morning blessings, containing 8 Sefim, Sefim 1 through 4, laws pertaining to individual blessings. Sef 5, someone who was awake the entire night, so is somebody who sleeps during the night and gets up and does the morning blessings. Is there a different level of obligations pertaining to that person who slept as opposed to pertaining to somebody who stayed awake all night? And then they both find themselves arriving at the same point in the morning to do the morning blessings. Then we have Sefim 6 through 7. If the blessing was not recited before prayer. 8. Ascending to the Torah before reciting the Torah blessings. Okay, so let's get into it. Number 1, after the recitation of the blessing, la'asak b'divrei Torah, which means to engross ourselves in the words of Torah, there is a disagreement among halakhic authorities whether the listener should answer Amen or not. Remember, in most cases when you say a bracha, you don't say Amen to your own brachas, although sometimes you do, in certain cases, the bracha Hamazon, for example. There are usually that's the forte of the person that is present with you to say Amen to your bracha. They're agreeing with you in a sense of what you're saying, and the Amen is a very important part of the bracha. Some say that the end of the blessing is not here at B'divrei Torah, but rather that the next words Va harev na, sweeten please, etc., are a continuation of the previous blessing of La'asak B'divrei Torah, and it is all one blessing. Therefore, they are of the opinion that one should not recite Amen at that point, but some say that the blessing does end here with the words La'asak b'divrei Torah, and the Harev Na is the beginning of a different blessing. Therefore, they maintain that one is required to respond Amen after the words La'asak b'divrei Torah. Now, this is a very important point to raise. One of the things that the Mashiach will do when he arrives is he will go through all the areas in the oral Torah where there is a conjecture and there's what, for want of a better word, a grey area. And he will resolve these grey areas and give a definitive ruling. And in the Orthodox Jewish world, among their desire to be released from their galus, released from their exile, is also this deep desire that the Mashiach will clarify a lot of the Torah for them, and especially in terms of halakha and what they should do and should not do. And so a lot of people who profess a desire for the arrival of Mashiach soon have absolutely no awareness whatsoever that one of the major roles that he will perform is actually going through and clarifying a lot of halakha. And this should be something that somebody is pining for, is desiring for, on the same level as the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash and the restoration of all the good things of this world, and the release from the exile and so on and so forth. Which leads me to another point to raise. It's all well and good for people to want to be joined to the nation of Israel when everything is restored. It's a totally different thing to want to join the nation while they're in exile, while they're in a place of persecution and difficulty. And so, according to Halakha, the time of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, it was forbidden to receive converts because everybody wanted to become a member of the nation of Israel because it was flourishing and it was causing great many blessings to be happening in the world, and there was great many amazing things that were happening within the nation. But, and so too in the time of Mashiach, before I go into that, so too in the time of Mashiach as in the time of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, once Mashiach arrives, there will be no opportunity for conversion once Mashiach's feet hits ground zero. Once he arrives on earth, that's it. And he restores all things and things become amazing. Of course, everybody wants to be a part of it. But when the chips are down and things are bad, absolutely, people can convert to Judaism because it shows that the person's really genuine most of the time about actually converting and changing and dying to their former self and becoming a new person as a fully fledged member of the Jewish nation, being a completely observant male, because it's not a good time to be a Jew. So therefore, okay, you can join. That shows that you're really, really genuine. Like when there's people that are out there wanting to try and kill and torture and maim Jews, you want to join the nation of Jews, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jew, and have all the things that are incumbent upon them. And not only that, the world wants to kill you. Okay, you're either crazy or you're someone who is extremely smart. And a lot of the times it's the latter. They're extremely smart people. Thus, since it is uncertain whether answering Amen is appropriate, the one reciting this blessing should recite this blessing in an undertone so that his friends should not hear him reciting the blessing and be put in a situation of doubt about responding Amen. Number 2, the blessing of Hanotan Letechvi Vina, who gives the heart understanding to distinguish between day and night, etc., should not be recited until daybreak. Number 4, this is the footnote. This blessing expresses praise for the ability to differentiate between night and day. As such, it should be recited only after daybreak when the difference is manifest. See Siman 18, Saif 1, where Kitzur rules that day begins at Elot Hashikha. And so, of course, this is something that we do only after we see daylight, we see that the dawn has broke. Because we're saying the blessing, you give us the ability to distinguish between night and day. Number 3, the blessing of Pokeach Ivirim, who gives sight to the blind, may be recited even by a blind person. How so? For he benefits from the gift of sight, since others can show him the way. So I don't know if any of you that say the bracha every morning, if you do, you've ever contemplated, well, what does a blind person do when they're saying the morning blessings? Do they still say that blessing? Yes, they absolutely do, because they benefit from the sight of other people. And who knows, down the track, they may hopefully regain and have their eyesight restored. If one first recited the blessing, Zakif Kafufim, he straightens the bent. Before reciting the blessing of Matir Surim, who releases the bound, he should not recite the blessing of Matir Asurim anymore, for it has already been included in the blessing of the Sakef Kafufim. This is because included in man's ability to stand erect is the relief of man's limbs from his constricted state. And the footnotes reads, the blessing of Matir Asurim was instituted as praise for man's ability to sit, at which point one's limbs are no longer constricted as they were when he was sleeping. The blessing of Zechayef Kafufim, which refers to man's ability to stand, goes further than that, as it includes a blessing over man's ability to sit. Once the more inclusive blessing has been recited, it would be pointless to recite a more limited one. Mishnah Berurah 46:20. However, cites authorities who maintain that one should recite the blessing Matir Sirim even in such a case. Again, so there's a disagreement here, even in the Shulchan Aruch, and the one seek the advice of their rabbi, and their rabbi will make the decision of which way to go. But when Mashiach comes back, he will clarify all these things. Number 4, after hearing the words Hamavir Shina Mi'i Enei Tenuma Ma Afipa, he removes sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids, one should not respond with Amen, for this point is not the conclusion of the blessing. Rather, the paragraph that follows, Vahi Ratzon, may it be your will, etc., is also part of this blessing. And the conclusion of the blessing is Hagimel Chasudim Tovim La Ama Yisrael, who bestows beneficent kindnesses upon his people Yisrael. Any footnotes worth mentioning there? No, there's no footnotes. 4. 5. One who is awake all night should recite in the morning all the morning blessings, except for the blessing of Natalat Yadayim, which is the washing of hands, which he should not recite, and the blessing of Elochai Nishama my Elohim, the soul you placed within me, has been renewed and restored. And the Hamavir Shani, who removes sleep from my eyes, should also not be recited. Okay, so he doesn't need to wash his hands because he hasn't been in a state of 1/60th of death. He hasn't been in a state of sleep, in which case Ruach Ra'ah, unclean spirits, will rest upon the fingers, or specifically the fingernails, of the individual until he washes his hands ritually, preferably five pores on each hand slightly clenched into a heart and swiveled as the water's poured over them 5 times representing the 5 books of the Torah, and washing the Ruach Ra'ah off the hands. So if one doesn't enter into a state of sleep, no Ruach Ra'ah will settle on that person's fingers. When somebody who studies Torah and is becoming successful in his learning goes to sleep, the unclean spirits sees him as a point where they can cipher energy from him, because while he's in a state of sleep, being not conscious of what he's doing, it's seen in many regards as a honey jar with the lid off. And this is one of the reasons why Shlomo HaMelech came up with the custom of appointing 70 mighty ones to be around his couch from fear in the nights, each with his sword on his thigh, to protect him during the night watch while he slept. King Solomon did a lot of things during his reign that went into areas that made him very vulnerable in the spiritual realm, and so therefore he had to summon a large amount of Malachim angels to surround his bed to keep him protected during the night watch. Similarly, and the other thing is, he doesn't say, "Blessed are you, Hashem, who has returned my soul within me," because his soul has not checked in Shemayim to actually scribe his day, write down the events of his day, or to be available to testify in other people's judgments during that time, or do whatever they might have to else they have to do. The neshama, the soul, has to do. The soul hasn't left him. The soul has been maintained with him all night, so he doesn't have to say thank you for returning to me, because it hasn't gone anywhere. Removing sleep from the eyes, he doesn't have to, because he didn't get to sleep. It's quite self-explanatory there. In regard to the blessing over the study of Torah, if one was awake the entire night, there is a doubt whether or not he should recite the blessing. Therefore, he should endeavor to hear these blessings from others and respond to Amen to them. Number 6, all the morning blessings. If he did not recite them before he prayed, he may recite them after he prays, except for the blessing of Al Natalat Yadayim regarding washing of hands, since some authorities say that the washing of hands in the morning was instituted for the purposes of having clean hands during prayer. If so, after one has prayed, there is no longer any place, i.e. need for this blessing, except for the blessing of Elochai Neshama, my Elohim, the soul you placed within me, for he already fulfilled the obligation to give praise for the return of his soul in the morning, with the blessing of Mekiyah Hamotim, who revives the dead, which he recited during the Shemona Esrei prayer. The footnote to that, let's have a look at that. According to this view, while the blessing of the Mekiyah Hamatim refers to the ultimate revivification of the dead, it also alludes to the return of man's soul to his body when he awakes from sleep. However, Mishnah Berurah 52:9 maintains that in this case one should not rely upon the blessing of Mekiyah Hamatim in the Shemona Esrei to fulfill the need to praise Hashem for awakening from sleep. Rather, one should specifically have in mind that he should not want to fulfill this obligation when saying the blessing of Mekiyah Hamatim, and should then recite Elochai Neshama after the Shemona Esrei prayer. See also Igrit Moshe Chaim 5. 2012, who maintains that the blessing of Mekei Hamatim definitely cannot be construed as referring to awakening in the morning too. Okay. Number 7, if he has not recited the blessings over Torah study before prayer, the halakhic authorities disagree whether or not he should recite them after the prayer service. Some say that he should not recite them because he has already discharged the obligation to say them by reciting the blessings of Hava Rabbah with an abundant love, or Havat Olam, with an eternal love before the Kriyat Shema. For this blessing also contains the essence of the blessing over the Torah within the words, instill in our hearts to understand and elucidate, to listen, to learn, and to teach. Some say that reciting the blessing of Hava Rabbah does not exempt one from the obligation to recite the blessing over the Torah, unless he studies Torah immediately after the prayers, without interruption. Therefore, ideally, one must be careful to recite the blessings over the Torah before the prayers. In the event that he forgot to recite the blessings before the prayers, he should learn some words of Torah immediately after the prayers. And if he forgot to do this as well, then due to the doubt, he is still not required to recite the blessings over the Torah. 8, Saif 8. If they called him for an aliyah to the Torah before he recited the blessing over the Torah privately, if it is possible for him to recite before going up to read from the Torah all the private Torah blessings, and also to recite at least one verse, such as V'yevarecha, my Hebrew, may Hashem bless you, etc. One of the verses normally recited after the Torah blessings, he should do so, and after that, he should ascend to read the Torah and recite the blessing, the public blessing. But if it is impossible for him to do so, i.e. there is no time for him to say the blessings without causing delay, he should go up to the Torah as is, without having said the private blessings. And since he will have recited the blessings of Asher B'Chabanu, he who has chosen us, upon reading from the Torah in public, he does not repeat the blessing afterward. Rather, he should say only the blessings of Asher Kedishanu. He has sanctified us, and continue with the blessing of Harav Nor, please sweeten, etc., until its conclusion with the words La Amma Yisrael, to his nation Israel, and then he should say Yivarechecha, etc. Footnote, there is a footnote to, and after he should ascend to the Torah and recite the public blessing, the footnote here reads, since the blessing recited before reading the Torah in public is the same as one of the blessings for the Torah study said privately, one might think that he should not make the private blessing, and thus he would avoid repeating the blessing for the public reading. However, Kitzur asserts otherwise, explains that this is because the sages instituted two distinct circumstances for B'chot HaTorah, one for individual study, and the second for the public reading of the Torah. Although identical textually, these are viewed as two distinct blessings, and therefore recited the blessing in public is not considered repeating, even though the same blessings was recited but a moment earlier. See Shulchan Aruch 139, 8 and 9. And also too, if you don't say the bracha, the blessing, before you read the Torah, somebody's going to think, well, why didn't he say the blessing? And it raises too many concerns. So, okay, that guy said the blessing before he said it. Oh, okay. Oh, so he didn't say it before, so the other guy's more diligent. It just becomes over the top. Now, one of the things that continue to fascinate me before we part ways, when looking at the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and all the different topics that are discussed and travailed over, as I'm finding with the Gemara, reading the Talmud up to Tractate Eruvin, is the amount of things that the Jewish mind is concerned with in terms of the way they conduct themselves in their service to Hashem, in terms of their formal conduct, whether it's in public or whether it's in private. And you just do not see this to this degree in any other religion that professes to follow the Bible. And you can sit there and say, well, my Jesus said that all this is garbage, and that is absolutely untrue. He did not say that at all. He rather Well, he didn't even exist. Jesus didn't even exist. It was Yeshua. He was emphasizing more on where the emphasis was being placed in terms of Torah observance and Halakha observance. And that there were other things perhaps that were much more important that were being neglected, as opposed to things that were not as important being very finitely executed. And so the answer is that everything should be executed with great attention and detail. Well, the weightier matters and the less weightier matters. Obviously, if there's something at stake on some rare occasion where one has to be chosen over the other, the weightier matter is to be observed, which is what we learn in terms of where it's permissible to break the Shabbat. It's absolutely permissible to break the Shabbat, but only according to where it is permissible to do so, and that is usually where there is an issue of there being potential for a life risk. If there is a potential for a life risk, not if there's a definite life risk, but if there is if there's 1% of a potential of a life risk, then obviously a person is permitted to rectify that situation. And if that means that they break the Shabbat, then it's permissible for them to break the Shabbat. So in essence, on a deeper level, if they're driving somebody to hospital on Shabbat, if they're an ultra-Orthodox Jew, then they're actually observing the Shabbat. And if they were to stay home and let the person die, they've actually broken the Shabbat. They go, well, I can't drive a car on Shabbat. No, you're an imbecile. You're an imbecile. The Yeshua said, the Messiah said, that the Torah was, the Shabbat was made for man. Man wasn't made for the Shabbat. If man was made for the Shabbat, then if somebody died, oh, well, sorry, buddy, I can't help you. You're just going to have to die because I can't drive you to the hospital. So we have to be very cautious and we have to be very conscious and respect these Jewish writings, because when we look at the man who collected wood on the Sabbath, he didn't light a fire. He didn't get stoned for lighting a fire. He simply got stoned for collecting wood. And so he transgressed 3 halakot, that is sifting, that is transporting from one domain to another. And I forget what the third one is, sifting and heaving, I think, and transporting from one domain to another. So you don't actually necessarily get specific teachings found in the Torah of what he did wrong. You do, but it's very hard to spot them. And that's why they had to wait and get direction from Moshe to find out what should be done with them. So this is probably the single most catalyst incident that caused the Jews to be set off on a path whereby they were going to go through every possible scenario on the Sabbath and analyze it and find out what is permissible and not permissible, because this guy had his life taken from him in a very violent way. And so they're like, okay, all he did was collect wood. Okay, we're gonna work all this out so this never happens again. And so what a lot of Christians do is they look at the Talmud, they look at all these Jewish writings, and they look at them with scorn, and they go, "Oh, look, that's what the Messiah was talking about." They were carrying on about all this stuff frivolously when they were ignoring the basic stuff. Well, to a degree, that's correct, but on a lighter level, they've got an advantage over the average person because they've grown up living in observant environments. And so that's why Yeshua said, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not have a place in the kingdom to come. And it's sort of an unusual thing to say, because it's almost like a backhanded compliment for the Pharisees. But I'm rambling. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you join me for the next installment of the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're getting through there I can't believe we're up to Siman 8. That is such a blessing. I hope you enjoyed our little video today, and I hope you have a great week. Bye for now.